New Britain. The air is thin enough to sting the lungs through the oxygen mask, cold enough that exposed skin numbs in seconds. Inside the aluminum skin of the B-17, the sound is constant. 4 Wright Cyclone engines hammering in uneven harmony, metal vibrating. The deep thrum felt through boots and bones rather than heard. Captain Robert "Red" Mallory grips the control yoke and stares through the windshield at a sky crowded with black puffs. Japanese flak bursts bloom around the formation like dirty flowers, some close enough that the fortress shudders as fragments rattle across the fuselage. "Flak's walking in," the co-pilot says unnecessarily. Mallory doesn't answer. He's flown enough missions out of Port Moresby to know the rhythm. First the bursts are scattered, then they tighten. Then if you're unlucky, they start landing exactly where you are. Below them, WarVault Harbor is a nest of ships, oil tanks, and anti-aircraft guns, one of the most heavily defended targets in the Pacific. The Japanese know the B-17s are coming. They always do, and today they're ready. A warning crackles over the intercom. "Bandits, high 6. Mallory feels his stomach tighten. Outside, sunlight flashes on wings as a flight of Mitsubishi A6M0s drops from above, noses down, engines screaming. They come in fast, too fast for careful aim, because Japanese doctrine values aggression over patience. Get close, get hits, break the bomber apart. Lieutenant Kenji Nakamura leads the attack. He has 23 victories painted in small white marks beneath his cockpit. He has tangled with American fighters, British bombers, Dutch patrol planes. Heavy bombers, though, that's still something new. Through his gun sight, the B-17 looks absurdly large, boxy, slow. Its silver skin gleams, sunlight catching on the greenhouse nose and the tall vertical tail. "Flying Fortress," someone had called them over the radio weeks earlier, laughing. Nakamura squeezes the trigger. His 20 cannons thump, recoil shuddering through the Zero's light frame. Tracers walk across the bomber's left wing root and fuselage. He expects the effect he's seen so many times before: fire, smoke, pieces tearing away. Instead, the bomber keeps flying. Inside the B-17, the impact is deafening. A cannon shell detonates somewhere aft, punching jagged holes through the skin. Shrapnel screams through the radio compartment. The tail gunner yells as fragments slice through the fuselage behind him. "Control cables hit," someone shouts. Mallory fights the yoke as the aircraft lurches, then steadies. Warning lights glow red across the panel. One engine coughs, belches black smoke, then dies. "Number 3's out," the engineer reports, voice tight but controlled. They've trained for this. The B-17 is built for this. Mallory feathers the prop, compensates with rudder, holds formation as best he can. Outside, Nakamura circles back, confused. He saw the hits. He knows they landed. He lines up again, closer this time, firing until his guns run dry. The fortress absorbs it. Bullets punch holes. Plexiglass shatters in the nose. A section of the wing's trailing edge peels away like torn fabric. Fuel sprays out in a mist that should ignite at any second. But it does. Nakamura pulls away hard, heart pounding, not with fear but disbelief. "They're still flying," he says over the radio. Around him, other Japanese pilots are reporting the same thing. Hits that would have destroyed lighter aircraft seem to barely slow the American bombers. Some trail smoke. Some limp along on fewer engines, but they stay together. They stay aloft. Inside Mallory's aircraft, the bombardier crawls back from the nose, face pale, oxygen mask cracked. The radio operator presses a hand against a bleeding arm, wrapping it clumsily with gauze. "Bomb bay doors jammed," someone reports. "Then we take them home," Mallory says, "all of us." The bombs fall anyway, somewhere over the harbor. Explosions blossom, ships shudder, fires begin to spread. Formation turns away, engines straining, flak still snapping around them. Another Zero makes a final pass, raking the left wing. Metal tears free. The wing flexes violently, frighteningly. Half of it looks wrong now, bent, shredded, unfinished. Mallory stares at it through the side window and forces himself not to think about what that means. They're losing altitude, slowly, dangerously, but they're flying. Far below, Nakamura watches the bomber recede, damaged beyond anything he's seen, still airborne. He feels something new settle in his chest, not respect yet, but doubt. That aircraft should not be there. And yet it is. As the B-17 limps south toward New Guinea, leaking oil and blood and pieces of itself, one truth is becoming impossible to ignore on both sides of the Pacific. This enemy is not as fragile as expected, and this machine does not die easily. The ocean stretches endlessly beneath the wounded bomber, a hard blue-black sheet broken only by whitecaps and the faint wakes of ships far below. Every minute in the air feels stolen. Inside the B-17, the cold has deepened. With one engine dead and another coughing intermittently, electrical power is limited. The cabin smells of burned oil, cordite, and something sharper, fear kept in check by routine. Mallory keeps his eyes forward. He does not look at the left wing again. He already knows what he would see. The engineer moves carefully between stations, stepping over spent shell casings and fragments of aluminum skin. He runs his hands along vibrating bulkheads, listening, feeling for changes that might signal failure. "We're holding for now," he reports. No one responds. There is nothing to say. Hours later, though it feels like days, the coastline of New Guinea appears on the horizon. Port Moresby's airstrip is little more than a scar hacked into jungle and dirt, but it might as well be a cathedral. As the fortress limps in, ground crews stop what they are doing and stare upward. They have seen damaged aircraft return before, shot up fighters, bombers with engines out, but this is different. The left wing is barely recognizable. Entire sections of skin are gone. Internal ribs are exposed like broken bones. The aileron hangs partially detached, fluttering in the slipstream. "How is that thing still flying?" someone mutters. Mallory eases the bomber down with hands numb and aching, fighting asymmetric lift, compensating constantly. When the wheels finally hit the strip, the aircraft bounces, shudders, then settles. It rolls to a stop, trailing smoke. When the engines cut, silence crashes down just as hard as the noise had. The crew climbs out slowly, stiff and pale, boots hitting the dirt as if testing whether the ground is real. A medic grabs the radio operator. Another man sits down abruptly beneath the wing, staring at nothing. A maintenance officer walks around the aircraft once, twice. Then he stops and just shakes his head. "Half a wing," he says quietly. "Jesus Christ." Photographs are taken, word spreads. Pilots from other squadrons come to see it, tracing fingers along torn metal, imagining themselves inside. The B-17 earns a nickname that afternoon, one that will be repeated across mess halls and briefing rooms, the one that wouldn't fall. Thousands of miles away at WarVault, Lieutenant Nakamura sits in a dim, ready room, helmet on his knees, listening as intelligence officers speak in careful tones. They discuss ammunition expenditure, engagement ranges, claims versus confirmed kills. A senior officer frowns. "Our pilots report extensive damage," he says, "yet fewer bombers destroyed than expected." Nakamura speaks up, choosing his words carefully. "They are not like the others," he says. "They continue after hits that should cripple an aircraft." Some pilots scoff quietly, others nod. The Japanese air arm prides itself on skill, on precision, on the belief that superior airmanship can overcome material disadvantage. But the reports keep coming. B-17s returning with tails half shot away, with multiple engines out, with fuselages so riddled with holes that daylight shines through. Japanese pilots begin adjusting their attacks, longer firing passes. Concentration on engines, head-on attacks despite the defensive fire, despite the risk. Losses rise. A Zero pilot misjudges closure speed and is shredded by nose guns. Another lingers too long beneath a bomber and is caught by the ball turret. The Americans do not chase. They do not need to. Their bombers fly on. For the first time, Japanese commanders confront a troubling reality. Their doctrine, built on light, agile fighters and devastating initial blows, assumes the enemy will break. The B-17 does not break. It absorbs punishment and continues its mission, and when it cannot, it still comes home. Back at Port Moresby, Mallory stands in the evening heat watching mechanics swarm over his aircraft, already stripping away damaged panels, already planning repairs. "Think she'll fly again?" the co-pilot asks. Mallory watches a crew chief inspect the wing spars, tapping them with a hammer, nodding slowly. "Yeah," he says, "I do." And he is right. Within weeks, the bomber is back in the air, scarred, patched, heavier than before, and just as stubborn. Every time it appears over Japanese targets again, pilots remember. They remember the one that should have fallen, and they adjust their tactics not out of mockery now, but out of necessity. Because the flying fortress has proven something that cannot be unseen. It is not enough to hit it, you must destroy it completely. And that is far harder than anyone expected. By late 1942, the skies over the South Pacific have changed character. What once felt like duels, quick slashing passes, clean victories, have become grinding tests of endurance. At altitude, the B-17 formations move with a kind of indifferent patience. Box formations tighten. Gunners grow more disciplined. Crews learn to read each other's movements without speaking, holding positions even when instinct screams to break away. Major Robert Mallory feels it on every mission now. The tension is different. Less fear of sudden death, more awareness of cumulative damage. What happens when systems fail one by one? On a raid against shipping near Buna, Flak walks up through the formation with mechanical precision. Black puffs blossom around the bombers, rocking them like waves. "Flak's heavy," the navigator reports unnecessarily. Mallory feels the fortress shudder as shrapnel tears through the nose section. Plexiglass crazes, cracks spreading like spiderwebs. The bombardier curses, wiping blood from his forehead. "Still good," he says, voice tight. Sunlight flashing off wings as they dive in pairs. They no longer make casual passes. They come in fast, head-on, firing until the last possible second before pulling through the formation. The nose guns open up. The cockpit fills with noise so loud it becomes pressure, a physical thing pushing against the skull. 1-0 disintegrates under converging fire. Another limps away trailing smoke. A third gets through. Rounds hammer the right wing. The outer engine coughs, sputters, then flames out. Feathering 3, the engineer shouts. The bomber lurches, but it does not fall out of formation. Mallory adjusts trim, jaw clenched, sweat freezing against his neck despite the cold. They have trained for this, rehearsed it endlessly. 1 engine out is survivable, 2 is dangerous, 3 is desperate. But the B-17 keeps flying. Below, Japanese pilots begin to notice something unsettling. Their hits are good. Their aim is accurate. They see impacts, see pieces fly off, yet the bombers hold altitude, hold course, hold formation. Petty Officer First Class Kenji Nakamura, now more cautious, more experienced, lines up another pass. He focuses on the inboard engine, squeezes the trigger, sees strikes along the nacelle. Smoke pours out. Still, the bomber does not turn back. They ignore damage, he reports afterward, frustrated. They do not react as expected. At WarVault, tactical briefings grow longer and darker. Commanders stress concentration of fire, coordinated attacks, prolonged engagements. But prolonged engagements favor the bombers. Every second spent lining up another pass is another second exposed to interlocking machine guns. Every additional round fired costs fuel the zeros cannot spare. Loss rates creep upward. American intelligence notices the shift. Debriefs show the same pattern. More aggressive attacks, more head-on passes, more Japanese aircraft destroyed per mission. And still damaged B-17s return. Some come back barely controllable, crews exhausted, oxygen systems shot out, hydraulics gone, landing gear hand cranked down under fire, landings made on one break or none. Ground crews begin to joke darkly. If it's still in one piece, it's fixable. The jokes hide a deeper truth. The fortress is changing how men think about survival. Crews no longer assume that damage means loss. They assume it means work. Work to keep flying, work to keep formation, work to bring the aircraft home. That mindset spreads. For Japanese pilots, the realization is slower and more painful. Their fighters are still lethal, their pilots still skilled. But the margin for error is shrinking. A single mistake against a fortress formation is fatal. In one engagement over the Huon Gulf, Nakamura watches a Zero attempt a lingering tail attack. The American gunners wait, patient, then open fire. The Zero breaks apart in midair. Nakamura does not cheer when he lands. He does not joke in the ready room. He cleans his aircraft silently, replaying the fight in his head. They do not fear damage, he writes in his flight log that night. They fear failure. Back at Port Moresby, Mallory signs his name on a mission board already crowded with chalk marks. Another sortie tomorrow, another target, another chance to test the fortress against flak, fighters, and gravity itself. He knows the B-17 is not invincible. He also knows something far more important. As long as it can still fly, it will. And every time it does, the enemy learns the same lesson again. Breaking a flying fortress is not about skill alone. It is about endurance. And endurance is something the Americans are learning faster than anyone expected. November 12, 1942, 21,000 feet above the Bismarck Sea. The cold is sharper today, biting through gloves and flight suits, seeping into bone. The horizon is a hard blue line, the ocean far below reflecting the sun like broken glass. Captain Robert Mallory's B-17, Lucky Lady, holds position on the left edge of the formation. She has flown 9 combat missions in 6 weeks. Olive paint is chipped. Her nose art is faded, but her engines are steady, the vibration familiar enough to be comforting. Bandits, high 2 o'clock, the tail gunner calls. This time they come in force. Zeros drop out of the sun in a coordinated dive, more disciplined than before. No hesitation, no probing passes, straight in, guns blazing, pilots committed. Mallory feels the fortress shudder as rounds slam into the fuselage. The interphone erupts with overlapping reports. Top turret hit. Hydraulics pressure dropping. Left wing, Christ, left wing S taking fire. The bomber bucks violently as something heavy tears loose. The engineer looks out the blister window and goes very still. Skipper, he says carefully, you need to see this. Mallory cranes his neck. The outer portion of the left wing is gone, not damaged, not shredded, gone. Metal is peeled back like torn fabric. The aileron hangs at a grotesque angle, barely attached. Fuel streams backward in a shimmering mist. Any other aircraft would already be tumbling. The B-17 does not. She lurches, drops several hundred feet, then, against all expectation, stabilizes into a sickening, uneven glide. The remaining engines strain, props biting into thin air. Mallory's hands are locked on the yoke, muscles burning as he fights the asymmetrical lift. Every instinct tells him this is impossible, but they miraculously agree with reality. They are still flying. Jettison bombs, Mallory orders. Now, the bombardier punches the release. The load falls away, the aircraft jerking upward slightly as weight vanishes. Zeros streak past again, but their attacks falter. The formation tightens instinctively around Lucky Lady, other fortresses sliding closer, guns tracking, creating a moving wall of fire. 1-0 tries a beam attack, misjudges the closing speed, and disappears in a cloud of debris. Another breaks off entirely. Below them, Petty Officer Kenji Nakamura watches the damaged bomber refuse to die. He has never seen anything like it. The wing should not be holding. The lift equations do not make sense. The damage is catastrophic by every standard he has been taught, and yet the bomber stays airborne, escorted now, protected, carried home by its own kind. They are shielding it, he reports, incredulous. The damaged one. Back in the cockpit, Mallory can feel every vibration, every micro-adjustment. The fortress is no longer an aircraft so much as a negotiation between gravity and stubbornness. The engineer feeds power carefully, coaxing the engines, watching temperatures spike dangerously. Don't push her, Mallory says. We just need to stay up. The radio crackles. Fighter escort voices break through at last. Fortress with wing damage, this is Red 2, we've got you. P-38 Lightnings slide into view, silver shapes flashing past. The Japanese fighters scatter almost immediately. The long flight back is agony. Every minute stretches, every bump feels fatal. The controls respond sluggishly, unpredictably. The crew says little. There is nothing left to say. Over the coast, the fortress begins to lose altitude again. The damaged wing flexes alarmingly. Mallory lines up for landing far sooner than planned, choosing the first strip in range. The ground rushes up too fast. No flaps, the engineer warns. They're gone. Mallory nods. He knows. The landing is brutal. B-17 slams onto the runway, veers violently, collapses onto the damaged wing. Metal screams. The aircraft spins, skids, and finally grinds to a halt in a cloud of dust and smoke. For a moment there is silence. Then the crew begins to move. They climb out, legs shaking, staring back at the wreck with expressions that border on disbelief. Ground crews gather, pointing, swearing, laughing nervously. Someone counts the damage aloud. Half a wing, a mechanic says slowly. Jesus Christ. Photographs are taken, reports written. The aircraft is declared a total loss. The crew is not. Within days, word spreads through American units, through intelligence channels, even into Japanese briefings. A flying fortress returned with half a wing missing. At Rabaul, Nakamura hears the story secondhand. Then a third time, then again from a pilot who swears he saw it himself. Exaggeration, some say. Propaganda, others insist. But doubt has crept in, and it will not leave. Because too many bombers are coming back damaged. Too many crews are surviving hits that should have killed them. The B-17 is no longer dismissed as clumsy or slow. It is something else now, a machine that absorbs punishment, a formation that protects its own, an enemy that does not fall apart when struck. And once that understanding settles in, Japanese tactics begin to change again, more caution, more standoff, more frustration. Because how do you fight an aircraft that refuses to accept defeat as a condition of damage? The answer, they are beginning to realize, is not simple, and it is not quick. The ready room is quieter now. The easy confidence that once filled the air has thinned, replaced by the scrape of chairs and the rustle of maps being unfolded and refolded. Petty Officer Kenji Nakamura sits with his helmet between his knees, listening as an intelligence officer pins photographs to a board. Grainy images. Bent propellers, torn fuselages, B-17s riddled with holes yet unmistakably airborne. These aircraft return to base, the officer says, tapping one phode. This one flew over 300 miles after sustaining structural damage. Someone scoffs, but it is half-hearted. Nakamura doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He remembers the fortress with the ruined wing, the way it refused to fall, the way its formation closed ranks around it like living armor. The rules he learned as a cadet are slipping. In early encounters, Japanese doctrine relied on precision. A few well-placed cannon hits, a fuel tank ignited, a wing spar severed. Enemy aircraft were expected to break apart quickly. Victory in the air was clean, decisive. The B-17 is not cooperating. Over New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, bomber streams continue, slow, methodical, infuriatingly consistent. Interceptions score hits. Smoke pours from engines. Control surfaces hang loose, and still the bombers press on. Captain Robert Mallory is flying again by February, this time in a different aircraft, a newer fortress fresh from the States. The crew is different too, replacements, some barely out of training, but the routine is the same. Climb, form up, hold position, flak bursts ahead, black puffs marking the air like stains. The bomber rocks as shrapnel peppers the skin. Mallory barely reacts now. Damage is expected. Survival is assumed. Engine's coughing, the engineer reports. Mallory nods. Feather it if you have to. They've done this before. Japanese fighters attack from longer range now, firing bursts and pulling away faster. The once bold head-on passes are rarer. The cost has become too high. Nakamura is part of that shift. On a February sortie, he lines up a fortress from below and behind, squeezes the trigger, and watches his rounds tear into the belly. The bomber shudders. Smoke pours out. It should fall. It doesn't. Instead, the formation tightens, guns converging, turning Nakamura's firing lane into a corridor of tracers. He breaks off hard, heart hammering. They don't scatter, he reports afterward, even when damaged. This is the true revelation. The B-17 is not just durable as a machine, it is durable as a system. Self-sealing fuel tanks limit fires. Redundant controls allow partial flight even after catastrophic damage. Crew training emphasizes damage control as much as gunnery. And above all, the formations are disciplined. Every fortress is protected by the others. Every gun overlaps. Every damaged aircraft becomes the center of gravity around which the rest maneuver. In one engagement over Bougainville, Nakamura witnesses 3 bombers limp away together, one trailing smoke, another missing an engine, a third with its nose shattered. None are shot down. Later intelligence confirms all 3 landed. That night, Nakamura writes in his journal. Strike them again and again, they bleed metal but not momentum. Japanese commanders take notice. Briefings now emphasize concentration of fire. Multiple fighters assigned to single targets. Prolonged attacks despite defensive fire. But this has consequences. Fighters linger longer in the kill zone. Losses rise. Veteran pilots do not return. For the first time, Japanese airmen begin to feel attrition working against them, not through dramatic defeats, but through the slow erosion of experience. Mallory hears about this shift from intelligence officers. They're changing tactics, one says. They're desperate to finish the job. Mallory looks out at the line of fortresses warming up on the strip, engines rumbling in unison. Good, he says quietly. Let them try. By spring, the myth of the fragile American bomber is dead. Japanese pilots no longer laugh when B-17s appear. They steel themselves. They calculate risk. They weigh ammunition and fuel against the likelihood that even a successful attack may not produce a kill. The fortress has rewritten the terms. Damage is no longer enough. To stop a B-17, you must destroy it completely, or accept that it will come back tomorrow, patched, reinforced, and escorted by another dozen just like it. Nakamura feels this truth settle heavily. They are no longer fighting aircraft. They are fighting endurance. And endurance, he knows, favors the side that can afford to lose and keep flying anyway. March 1943, Port Moresby. The airfield wakes before dawn. Engines cough, then roar. Ground crews move with practiced urgency, hands slick with oil, faces unreadable in the half-light. The bombers sit in rows, wings overlapping shadows on the pierced steel planking. Captain Robert Mallory walks the length of his aircraft, hand trailing along the scarred aluminum skin. Patchwork repairs catch the light, fresh rivets, mismatched panels, paint that hasn't yet dulled to the same gray. This airplane has history. It has been hit. It has come back. They all have. Inside the cockpit, Mallory straps in and looks forward. The windscreen is spiderweb from an old impact, reinforced rather than replaced. The fortress does not demand perfection. It demands persistence. Crew ready, the co-pilot says. Mallory nods. Let's go to work. At altitude, the world becomes familiar again. Thin air. Engine vibration transmitted through bone. The long, steady pull toward the target. Below them, New Guinea's mountains roll like frozen waves. Flak bursts rise early, Japanese gunners now well practiced. The bombers do not deviate, they do not scatter. They never do. Nakamura climbs hard to meet them, lungs burning, engines screaming in protest. His Zero feels light, agile, still deadly, but now it feels small against what waits above. The first sight of the fortresses tightens his jaw. They are higher than expected, already in formation, already ready. He attacks anyway. Duty leaves no room for doubt. He lines up on a bomber trailing slightly behind the others, fires a long burst and sees panels rip away. Smoke blossoms. For a moment, just a moment, hope flares. Then the bomber steadies. Its gunners track him instantly. Tracers converge. Nakamura breaks away, barely avoiding a collision with another fortress sliding into position to cover the damaged one. They are adapting. Again, radio chatter crackles with frustration. Target damage still flying. Ammo expended, no kill. Breaking off. The formation holds. Back aboard Mallory's bomber, the engineer shouts over the din. Number 3 engines leaking oil? Mallory glances at the gauges, pressure dropping, temperature climbing. Throttle back, he orders. Keep her alive. The bomber loses speed, begins to lag. Immediately, 2 other fortresses ease back, tightening the box. Guns swivel outward. The damaged aircraft disappears into the center of the formation like a wounded animal protected by the herd. Nakamura watches it happen. B-17 is not designed to survive alone. It is designed to survive together. The bombs fall. The earth erupts. Smoke and fire climb skyward as the fortresses turn for home, engines uneven but steady. Japanese fighters attempt pursuit, but fuel is low now. Ammunition spent. Losses mounting. One by one, they peel away. Mallory nurses the bomber back toward the coast, one engine feathered, another vibrating ominously. The flight lasts hours. Each minute is an exercise in patience and trust, in the aircraft, in the crew, in the idea that damage does not equal defeat. When the runway finally appears, no one cheers, they focus, they land. The fortress touches down hard, gear straining, then rolls to a stop. Engines cut, silence rushes in. Ground crews swarm the aircraft, eyes widening at the damage. Jesus, someone mutters. How did you keep this thing in the air? Mallory climbs down slowly, legs stiff, and looks back at the bomber. Half the wing's skin is gone, control surfaces are scarred, the fuselage looks like it's been chewed. He shrugs. She wanted to come home. Word of these missions spreads quickly among Americans, among allies, and inevitably among the Japanese. Intercepted reports confirm what pilots already know. Fortresses are returning with damage that should have been fatal. Crews are surviving. Aircraft are being repaired and sent back out. The psychological shift is profound. Japanese pilots begin to hesitate, not out of fear, but calculation. Is the risk worth it if the bomber may survive anyway? Is prolonged exposure to defensive fire sustainable? Commanders wrestle with the implications. New tactics are proposed, heavier armament, different attack angles. Everything costs time, everything costs pilots. Attrition begins to tell. By mid-1943, Nakamura has fewer comrades in the ready room. Faces he once expected to see every morning are gone. The laughter that once followed talk of American bombers has vanished completely. He reads another intelligence summary, this one grimly factual. Enemy heavy bombers demonstrate exceptional survivability. Destruction requires concentrated fire and extended engagement. Extended engagement, which means exposure, which means losses. Mallory, meanwhile, keeps flying. He watches new crews arrive, green, nervous, eager. He tells them the truth. You'll get hit, he says. Badly sometimes. Don't panic. The plane can take more than you think. And it does, again and again. By the end of the year, Japanese doctrine has shifted permanently. Avoidance becomes preferable. Bombers are engaged when possible, but no longer mocked. The fortress has earned something rare in war, respect. Not because it is invincible, but because it refuses to die quietly. Nakamura survives the war. In later years, when asked about American bombers, he does not speak of speed or firepower. He speaks of stubbornness. They came back, he says simply. Always. That is the legacy of the B-17. Not a perfect weapon, a persistent one. A machine that taught its enemies a brutal lesson, that winning the air is not only about shooting the other man down, but about enduring everything he throws at you and flying home anyway.